revisions and corrections of the White Star Line officials and was furnished by them exclusively for this book. List of survivors. First cabin. Anderson, Harry. Antoinette, Miss. Iperonelt, Miss. Appleton, Mrs. E.D. Abbott, Mrs. Rose. Allison, Master and Nurse. Andrews, Miss Cornelia I. Allen, Miss E.W. Astor, Mrs. John Jacob and maid. Albert, Monsieurs N and maid. Barrett, Carl B. Bisette, Miss. Barkworth, A.H. Bucknell, Mrs. W. Bowerman, Miss E. Brown, Mrs. J.J. Burns, Miss C.M. Bishop, Mr. and Mrs. D.H. Blank, H. Bessina, Miss A. Baxter, Mrs. James. Brayton, George. Monell, Miss Lily. Brown, Mrs. J.M. Bowen, Miss G.C. Beckwith, Mr. and Mrs. R.L. Bisley, Mr. and Mrs. Bonnell, Miss C. Cassibeer, Mrs. H.A. Cardeza, Mrs. J.W. Kendall, Mrs. Churchill. Case, Howard B. Camerium, Kennard. Casabora, Miss D.D. Clark, Mrs. W.M. Chabinas, Mrs. B.C. Charlton, W.M. Crosby, Mrs. E.G. Carter, Mrs. Lucille. Calderhead, E.P. Chendanson, Miss Victoria. Cavendish, Mrs. Terrell and maid. Chaffee, Mrs. H.I. Cardeza, Mr. Thomas. Cummings, Mrs. J. Chevry, Paul. Cherry, Miss Gladys. Chambers, Mr. and Mrs. N.C. Carter, Mr. and Mrs. W.E. Carter, Master William. Compton, Mrs. A.T. Compton, Miss S.R. Crosby, Mrs. E.G. Crosby, Miss Harriet. Cornell, Mrs. R.C. Chibnall, Mrs. E. Douglas, Mrs. Fred. De Villiers, Monsieur. Daniel, Miss Sarah. Daniel, Robert W. Davidson, Mr. and Mrs. Thornton and family. Douglas, Mrs. Walter and maid. Dodge, Miss Sarah. Dodge, Mrs. Washington and son. Dick, Mr. and Mrs.